Alright, so this is the first in a series of new videos that I'm doing where I go through the top 10 cards for each set, each of the main sets. So I'll be starting with Legend of Blue Eyes. Uh, and I'm going to be including all of the banned cards in these lists. And I'm going to be ranking them as they stand in our current meta, if you would try to play them nowadays. First off, I'm going to start off with some of the honorable mentions. I feel like it's worth mentioning that there are a lot of fusions in this set, and that means there are a lot of good targets for instant fusion. If you need a particular attribute and type monster at a certain level. And past that, the next honorable mention is Skull Servant, because Skull Servant actually has a deck based around him, even though by himself it's not a very good card. And then the last honorable mention is Hane-Hane, which is a pretty good card for the set. Most of the monsters in this set are completely terrible. There's only a few effect monsters in the entire set, and Hane-Hane is the third best effect monster in the set. And it's almost as good as the second best. It almost does the same thing. So Hane-Hane is a flip effect monster, and you can send one of your opponent's monsters back to its hand. So this is good against extra deck monsters. You can return an Exceed or Synchro monster to the extra deck with Hane-Hane. And then coming in at 10th place is Maneater Bug. Maneater Bug used to be a staple. It was easy monster removal when it came out, and it had by far the best effect out of the first set, not including a special exception, which we'll get to later. And so Maneater Bug is still okay. It's not, you wouldn't want to play this nowadays. There's just better cards to play. But you can still use it to destroy one monster. So it's a 1-for-1 removal when you get its effect off. And then coming in at number 9 with a slightly better effect, but still similar, is Fissure. Fissure is also 1-for-1 monster removal, but it's in the form of a spell. And you can use Fissure to destroy your opponent's monster with the lowest attack. So oftentimes the monster you're destroying isn't really an issue, but compared if they have multiple monsters out on the field, you'll be destroying the weakest one probably. But if they only have one, you can use it to get rid of their one monster. It works like Smashing Ground, but it's not quite as good. As you can see, the set is rather weak because there's cards like Fissure taking the 9th spot. And then the next card at 8th place is Blue Eyes White Dragon. Blue Eyes White Dragon is here because, like Skull Servant, it has a lot of support, which allows you to make its own deck. And the Blue Eyes deck is better than the Skull Servant deck, in my opinion. And Blue Eyes by itself is a solid monster. 3000 attack is pretty good, but at this point, it's actually pretty easy to summon Blue Eyes. By special summoning him, you don't want to normal summon him. So Blue Eyes is a decent card still. And then coming in at 7th place, we have Swords of Revealing Light, which is still a decent stall card. If your opponent doesn't have a way to take out swords, then you can stall them for 3 turns. You can even bounce Swords of Revealing Light back to your hand to reuse it to make it last longer. So it's an okay card. And then we have in 6th place the best trap card in the set, Trap Hole. Trap Hole is still a decent form of monster removal in a trap. You can use this against normal summons, but it doesn't work against special summons, so it's not as good as, say, Bottomless Trap Hole. But Trap Hole still holds up, and it's run in a lot of Trap Tricks decks as one of the more widely useful Trap Hole cards. And then in 5th place, we have the best monster in the set, Exodia the Forbidden One. Exodia decks are still runnable today. They're actually better than they were when Legend of Blue Eyes came out because of all the draw power that we have in the game now. And so Exodia is just it's a win condition. It's a viable win condition. As such, it makes the list higher than all the previous cards, which were just decent cards that you could run, but that you probably don't want to run in most decks. And then once we get to 4th place, the next card, we get to Dark Hole, which is the first out of all the staple spells in the set. There are 4 staple spells in the set. So Dark Hole is the only one that's legal, as it is the weakest. But it's still pretty good. You can use it to obviously destroy all monsters in the field, so it's a pretty good effect. And it's still used today, but a lot of people sometimes side it now, so it's not quite as stable as it used to be. And then just ahead of that, in 3rd place, we have Raigeki, which is usually the same as Dark Hole because you don't want to play Dark Hole when you have monsters in your side of the field, but you can play Raigeki more often and have it be effective. So Raigeki is a little bit better than Dark Hole. And then in 2nd place, we've got the really powerful cards now. At 2nd place, I gave to Pot of Greed. Pot of Greed is just a free +1 whenever you play it. Every single deck would run Pot of Greed because there's not any good reason not to. It's a very, very powerful card. And then 1st place, you could debate whether or not Pot of Greed should be ahead of this, but I gave 1st place to Monster Reborn, which is a very powerful spell, obviously. You can, when you use Monster Reborn to bring back a monster from the grave, you can generate more advantage from that monster being on the field than you might necessarily get from Pot of Greed. Though I could definitely see you arguing for Pot of Greed to be the #1. The top 2 are very powerful spells that completely outclass most of the set. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'll be bringing you more top 10 lists for the various sets. Next up will be Metal Raiders.